couple of seconds to process.
Okay.
I am restarting the recording through Zoom just in case. Back up.
Awesome.
And let me check to make sure that the Facebook Live is coming through. Awesome. So we are live on Facebook and on Zoom. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. My name is Jessica McDaniel with NAMI Greater Houston, and this is our Tuesday Talk, where every Tuesday we come together and just talk about mental health in a variety of ways and topics and angles. So this Tuesday, we are so extremely excited to have Dreux Antoine and his special guest, Sheriff Ed Gonzalez. So thank you so much both for being here. Again, I'm so excited. I think the discussions that you have planned are so very needed. And I really hope that the audience engages with us and participates. So again, thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dreux, would you mind introducing yourself and then Sheriff Gonzalez?
Absolutely. My name is Dreux Antoine. I am originally from New Orleans, but I've been in Houston for the past 11 years. So now I'm a Houstonian. I come from a music entertainment background, food service background. I'm also an author, book author, cookbook author. And I also own several businesses in Houston and in the state of Texas. And I also do a lot of advocating for different organizations as well. So partner with NAMI to help shine the light on mental illness and of course, kind of make it a little bit more, I guess, well known, especially in the African American and minority communities.
And I'm Ed Gonzalez. I am currently the Harris County Sheriff. I was elected in 2016 and I took office in 2017, becoming the 30th Sheriff to serve Harris County in this capacity. Prior to this, I served 3 full terms on Houston City Council, where I was chair of the Public Safety Committee, as well as the Mayor Pro Tem for the city next to Mayor Anise Parker. And part of that, I was a Houston police officer where I served in different capacities. And from then, again, just very passionate about public policy, being able to serve all communities, underserved communities as well. I'm a native Houstonian, and I care very deeply about helping create a more effective criminal justice system.
Awesome. And I will say I've only been with NAMI about a year or so, but I know that we have a really good working relationship with you in your office. So I am aware that you are serious about your passion and that you mean what you say regarding mental health and criminal reform. So thank you so much for again being here and also for being so involved with this. So many politicians and authority figures distance themselves from mental health because they don't know how to handle it or because of how it may look. And right now, you see in the news, you see in every day that especially with the COVID crisis, that it's so important that we work together to make sure that people are getting the treatment they need, not always just punishment. We have a jail diversion program through, honestly, I don't know which office it goes through, but all that to say, Harris County and Sheriff's Office and NAMI have been working very well and very closely over the past few years. So
thank you.
Dreux, I will hand it off to you. Like I said, I know you have some very specific things that you'd like to discuss.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jessica. We appreciate all of the hard work that you've been doing to help bring and shine the light on NAMI and bring things together for the organization. Sheriff, once again, I want to thank you for doing this. I wanted to let you know that you wasn't the second pick.
Okay.
I know you're good friends with our chief of police here.
Yeah.
He and I actually were at the Chavez, the little memorial for Chavez not too long ago. And he and I had a discussion and he was willing to do this. But I know that we've spoken a while back about actually bringing everyone together to have this type of talk. So I'm just glad it happened and it came together as it did.
Absolutely.
I know your heart. I know that you really are one of the good police that we always talk about when we, have different situations. So that was one of the the great things about having you involved in this, is that I know your heart for the people, for the communities, for the city of Houston, and all of the cities that make up Harris County. I know that you're, willing to go over and beyond your duties to make sure that things are taken care of. I wanted to bring to you really the situation with law enforcement and how it pertains to people with a mental illness. Mm-hmm. I know we've seen in the news, especially just as of yesterday, in West Philadelphia, the young man who was shot and killed by police, who we've later determined had a mental illness. Even in Houston, not too long ago, just mentioning Nicholas Chavez, we've had that situation. We've had Pamela Turner. So the goal of bringing you on, Sheriff Gonzalez, is we need to hear from law enforcement what is being done. What are some of the initiatives, some of the programs, some of the things that law enforcement are doing that are helping communities, especially minority communities where they're underserved, underprivileged, as it pertains to those who suffer from a mental illness, especially now in this pandemic, where we've seen the increase in suicide, we've seen the increase and just pretty much people just losing their way. So I wanted to have this open discussion with you, just to hear from you as a professional law enforcement person on what's being done by Harris County, what's being done by the Sheriff's Office, what's being done Houston Police, if you're made aware of anything, just so that the people understand that things are just not going undone, but there are actually things that's being, produced, being planned or whatever. So let's have that discussion. So let's discuss the incident yesterday in Philadelphia. The officers shot and killed Mr. Walter Wallace Jr., who we later determined he was suffering from mental illness. What's your take on that situation?
Well, thank you, Dreux, for having me and for this very important dialogue. And I hope that this continues to be of utmost importance and that we continue to have this. I read briefly about the situation in Philadelphia. I don't have enough details, to be quite frank, to feel that I could discuss it in great detail. But nonetheless, I think from a 30,000-foot view and kind of continue along the lines of what you were asking is, I think that far too many encounters between especially Black men and the police have become violent and sometimes deadly, obviously. And that needs to change. We've seen it play out way too often across America, and we need to do better. And I think that many or most in the policing profession are willing and wanting to do that and be part of the solution. I know I do. We need to be part of the solution, not be part of the problem. We can't go into our separate corners and not end up solving anything. Something good must come from all of this. And I think that for far too long, the policing profession has frankly given lip service to talks about reform and change without maybe giving substantive changes. Right. And I think that what we're seeing play out in many situations where with the peaceful protest and the like are that frankly, people are just tired of it. They're tired of it happening. They're tired of seeing it and they want it to change. And we need to make sure that we're stepping up and being part of that solution, looking at our use of force policies, which we're doing, making sure that we're not only that we have well-written policies, but that the training is consistent with that emphasizes the sanctity of life of all parties involved, and that we also are training to that in the proper way. And that when somebody does something wrong that they weren't supposed to, that we hold them accountable quickly. Absolutely. And that we call them out on it. And that we have policing leaders that do step up. I know Chief Acevedo was one of the first ones. I stepped up and said that what we were seeing play out with the George Floyd tragedy was wrong, that it was a homicide and it was wrong. And we need to make sure that we're doing that. And that I think all of those are things that need to be discussed. I don't think that there's one answer that would fix it all. It has to be substantive discussion that's going on. I'll say also that in our profession, and I hope we could talk about this a little bit, there's 3 issues that in policing, we're at the front lines of right now as policemen, if you will. One is mental illness, two is addiction, and three are poverty. And law enforcement, we should not be in the front lines of those issues. Those should be community-based responses. Those require a public health lens for us to look at and respond to. And so I think that we have to unpack that a lot more, because I don't support mass incarceration in this country. I think it's led us down the wrong way. I think we have to rethink our failed drug policies that have led us to this place. And I think that when you have communities that have been disenfranchised for so long, that you're going to have trauma. Sometimes it plays out in a real way with individuals that are simply upset, or you have sometimes real trauma that was never addressed. You know, one of the studies that I did when I first took office here at the Sheriff's Office, we learned, and this has been vetted through Texas Children's Hospital and others, 90,000 children in Harris County every year have a parent that's incarcerated in our jail. There's trauma there. Those children, we know statistically, because many of us have worked on dismantling the cradle to prison pipeline, a high percentage are going to become justice involved. We know that. And we need to make sure that we're addressing that. We know that in jails across America, the fastest growing population are women. And we know that if we unpack that a little bit, there's unresolved trauma of sexual abuse, physical abuse, domestic violence, and all kinds of things that was never addressed, you know? And we have individuals that are simply broken in some form or fashion that cycle through our jail system because society hasn't done a better job of addressing that. And look, when I walk through our jail system, I say, you know, that I see, you know, one of the unique aspects of being a county sheriff is we have a unique perspective of running the jail system in our respective communities. So I think sheriffs have a unique role and an important role to play in this. And we have to be an important actor that's advocating for needed changes to our broken criminal justice system. And that we're just one cog of a larger system. And look, I've been a street cop, I've been a homicide detective, I've seen that lens. And my first priority every day is to make sure we're keeping our communities safe. But on the other side of running a jail system, I can tell you that we see the intersection of so many failed policies. One of the things that we do is we put a public dashboard every day that's updated every day that shows you our daily jail population, because we want our community to be able to vet that and see what we see every day. You know, I looked today prior to coming on with you, and we have about 8,600 individuals that are incarcerated today. Okay. Now, about 70% on any given day, and these numbers fluctuate a little bit, but about 70% are just pretrial individuals. They're just navigating their way through the criminal justice system. They haven't been convicted yet. You know, about 40% of those cases will end up being dismissed at some point. But what we can't do away with is the incarceration that already happened. Right. You know, and the children that are impacted by that. At the same time, Go ahead. No, at the same time, on any given day, we have about 34% that are on psychotropic medications. This isn't just somebody that we deem as, well, that person may be a little bit off or has some type of mental issues. Right. These are actual individuals that our physicians that we have in here have deemed that they require medication. 34%, the community's paying for that, yet we do it in a jail setting. 60% plus have some type of mental health indicator, meaning they probably have attempted or thought about suicide before. Yet we're cycling all these individuals through the jail. Now, don't get me wrong. I tell all of them that come through here, at some point, there's still accountability, right? We want to make sure that those that have committed a crime, and look, mental health and all that isn't an excuse. We still have to hold individuals accountable, but let them have their day in court. Let's make sure we're expediting that, because far too many never see their court-appointed attorneys. I've been screaming about that because that needs to change. They need due process. The victims need to make sure they have due process. But far too often, again, we see the impacts of addiction, poverty, and mental illness coming through our jails. And I'll pause there because I could talk about this all day. So I want to hear your take. And
Yeah, that's what we're here for. So you've touched on a few things that I actually wanted to talk to you about. So the first thing I want to do while we have you and while it's still early is I want you to speak to individuals who are afraid to call law enforcement, who may have a family member, a neighbor, or someone in their community who suffers from mental illness, but they are afraid to call the police for help because they see what happens when police are called to intervene with individuals that suffer with a mental illness. So, what would you say to them to help assure them that if they call, that chances are the police will be able to effectively and successfully handle that situation without it becoming a lethal encounter? What would you say to those individuals, sure?
first of all, I want to say that, look, I'm empathetic. I understand the concerns. I think your concerns are valid when you look at the national landscape of what's happened. And like I started my comments with, that far too often these encounters are becoming violent, and often they're becoming deadly, especially in our Black communities. I think that we have to understand that. At the same time, I think it's important that we understand some of the good things that are occurring in policing with many agencies. But I also want to say this is as just a citizen, not even a sheriff, it really concerns me and troubles me and hurts me when I talk to, especially communities of color, especially Black individuals, that tell me that they have to have that talk with their son, especially their sons, because of the concerns of getting stopped and something going wrong.
Right.
And that shouldn't be the America that we live in, you know. But putting that aside, I do want to say that there are police leaders that are being innovative, and I would put ourselves at the top in terms of being innovative when it comes to trying to better deal with these issues. When I first took over as sheriff, I launched the first ever of its kind mental health and jail diversion bureau. Many of you know Mike Lee. He's one of the trailblazers when it comes to mental health issues. He oversees this with a very stellar group. And we wanted to focus on bridging the divide sometimes that we see within the jail population, as well as what we see out in the community. So just a quick snapshot of some of the things that we are doing. One is we continue with our crisis intervention response team. What we do, and we've been doing for a long time, is we partner a deputy with a mental health clinician that responds to some of our mental health calls.
Okay.
And we see great success with that. They are pros at de-escalating situations and are very successful. The other one is we do a version of telepsychiatry. We have a very successful program where we've trained and provide some iPads to some of our responding deputies so that when they get there, they're basically triaging the situation. They connect the client, the victim that's calling for help, with a mental health clinician at the scene. Because sometimes, again, that capacity isn't in there in the community. Good luck if you're trying to get an appointment to deal with some type of mental health. You just can't walk in. Right. And so there's a backlog, and we get them that help right away. Okay. We recently launched our Project Guardian for individuals that may have a loved one with autism spectrum, where we've trained our deputies, and we also let that resident know. We provide them a sticker saying that there's somebody in that household that has autism, because many times they're listening to music as a way to calm some of their symptoms, as well as they sometimes bolt. And we may see them strolling in the middle of the night because they snuck out of their house. And we want to make sure that there's a good encounter that's built on understanding of the issues that may be going on so that it doesn't become violent. At the same time, we know that these situations can often be very dynamic and troubling and dangerous. Family disturbances with individuals that are maybe, dual diagnosis, where sometimes there's a mental illness situation, as well as addiction could be very volatile for law enforcement as well as individuals. So we are putting programs in place that are successful, that are evidence-based. At the Sheriff's Office, we also have a 24/7 diversion desk where if we identify that you have certain criteria where maybe you have some elements of mental illness or going through some kind of a difficult situation, we could possibly divert you to a mental health, a public health center, which is the EdMed Diversion Center, and both HPD and us contribute a lot of people that are struggling to get better help, and it never goes through a criminal justice system.
Okay, so you touched on a point that we have from one of our viewers that wanted to know what the training that the deputies go through. We'll speak on the deputies because you're the sheriff and you would know more. What's the training that they actually go through to deal with individuals that suffer with the mental illness? We know that you're partnering with the Harris Center and different organizations on that regard. But what specific training do the deputies go through to be able to answer to a mental illness call?
We do extensive training. When I took over as sheriff, I found out that we were not training at a very high level, even in the numbers. Not everybody was going through crisis intervention training in our agency. We have ramped that up in the first 3.5 years that I've been in this role. And we've expanded those numbers. In fact, we went to a 40-hour training block before it was mandated by the legislature via the Sandra Bland Act, because we knew how important it is. So everybody either working in our jail system or now out in patrol have the expanded training. We've increased our numbers significantly. They go through either scenario-based trainings. We have a virtual training module where they can see different scenarios and how they can respond and how quickly something that might appear to be a weapon is not, or maybe if somebody is autistic, how they can respond. We talk to them about PTSD. We talk to them about how traumatic brain injury sometimes can impact their response. And so we have to be and that's why sometimes it is a very challenging job, because again, law enforcement officers are dealing with these issues. And frankly, we need to build a more robust mental health safety net out there that's well-funded so that NAMI and other groups can be doing that critical work before it ever escalates to something where somebody is off their medications and things like that. One of the things that I did when I was on city council was we helped embed into the City of Houston budget, and I'm glad it's still there, the Chronic Consumer Stabilization Initiative. Okay. It was a pilot program back then, but now what we determine is when we invest and we find a medical home and really provide those wraparound services for individuals that may have mental illness, that make sure they're on their medication, those costs for service went down dramatically, like over 70%. And that's what we want, is to try to see how we could remove those encounters to begin with between law enforcement and individuals with mental illness. But we do offer these trainings. I encourage you to go to our specific website that deals with how we're addressing mental illness at harriscountycit.org, harriscountycit.org. That's not our main website for the Sheriff's Office. That's just very specific to talk about our training and the different programs that we offer related to mental illness response.
Got it. Thank you for pointing that out. So that helps us to be able to keep track and understand what's being done.
It lays it all out there. They also have their own Twitter handle, and okay. They constantly post all the different trainings that we do with different disciplines, because we know that it's very broad, and we want to make sure that we're hitting with different topics that will assist our deputies in making the best decisions.
Right. That's good. So we have a question from one of the viewers, Miss Nanette Ford. Jessica, can we get her on so she can ask her question?
Absolutely. Nanette, are you ready?
Yes, I'm here. So awesome. I have a current situation in real life, unfortunately. I have a brother. He's in Galveston County. He suffers from mental illness, and he had a psychotic break. And in a matter of a week, he left the comfort of his home and took to the streets. Mm-hmm. Currently, he's in Galveston County Jail and has been there for about a week and a half or so. We had reached out to some people while he was wandering the streets, but unless he turned himself in or committed himself, there was nothing they could do. and he wouldn't communicate with my sister or talk to her. So anyway, he is where he is now. The question I have is, so what are our next steps? Even if we were to get him out, what can we do to make sure that he's going to be safe?
Yeah, I'm assisting a family right now here in Harris County that's going through something similar. His is more related to an addiction, and he keeps cycling through it, and he's becoming very, in his case, very dangerous both to himself and those around him. And so,
well, I don't mean to interrupt or negate that situation, but my brother's 53 years old. He's never had a record.
Yeah.
He's not an addict nor a criminal.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So, I'm not comparing the two at all. What I'm trying to say is that we're trying to address different systems that have never worked in cohesion for the betterment of the individual. In this case, the individual I'm talking about has addiction issues, and they'll get arrested. At some point, he's got to be released. The mental health system says, well, he needs to either self-admit himself, or you've got to go through certain steps to make sure he gets in. In the case of your brother, this is the breakdown that happens is, there's no crime in just being homeless. So what ends up happening, though, is he goes to the street, he becomes even more vulnerable, probably without medications. He's not stable because of that. And so what happens is law enforcement gets involved, and kind of the only safe tool that we have is always very limited. We have handcuffs, we have a pistol, we have a taser, and then we have jail. And we tend to use jail as the stop for everything.
The remedy, right?
And that's not the way it should be. Your brother needs real help. And the network of laws and different entities, that's why we need more funding in this state for mental health care. And we hopefully funding. Our jail is the largest mental health hospital in the state of Texas. We should not be that.
But what can I do right now? What can I do as soon as I hang up the phone to work on getting my brother some help?
Yeah, I think what you need to do, and again, I'm not familiar with Galveston County. I think that what you need to find out, though, is get in touch with the jail. Discharge needs to be happening right now in terms of discharge planning, so that there is some level of a warm handoff to a service provider or someone that could help you navigate everything that's going down there. I don't know what safety, providers are there in Galveston County, but working together with a holistic plan for your brother, especially like you said, he hasn't been in trouble. We don't want him to end up cycling in and out. He needs help, and he needs support, and making sure that all these entities are there to lift you up and him up and help navigate the complexity of all these issues, because we grapple with this all the time because there's not an easy answer. I wish I could tell you in clear language, do A, B, and C. It all depends on the circumstances. And unfortunately, I just don't know enough about Galveston County.
Okay. May I also suggest that you call our care team?
Yeah.
We do have a warm line at 713-970-4483. NAMI is primarily based in Harris County, Fort Bend County, and Montgomery County, but we may have some information that could support you in Galveston County. If not, we can tell you where to go. And there is a NAMI that covers that area that we can connect you to. But I definitely agree with Sheriff Gonzalez in that he needs help, he needs treatment.
Yep.
So, I understand the legal support that you need right away to get him out of jail, but after that, your immediate next step needs to be treatment. So please give the warm line a call, and they can direct you to how, and they can even help you with the legal issues that you're having. They can kind of direct you to other community organizations that can support you in helping to get him out of jail. So it kind of circles back to what Sheriff Gonzalez was saying in the beginning, that, the issues that they're facing are really community-based issues that organizations like NAMI and other mental health organizations and community organizations should be the front lines on, instead of the police department.
It really, really, truly upsets me to no end that we take an illness, we take mental illness, someone's mental health, and we criminalize it. It's so costly. We're still paying for it, only we're paying for it in a very ineffective system which is the criminal justice system. And now you give somebody a criminal record, you know, for something that we inside the jail have no solution for. And so we need to all work together to really advocate that there has to be a better system of care, because this is irresponsible and we should not have it. There's better systems of care for this. We had somebody that suffers from dementia. He's an senior adult individual inside our system. Look, it's very personal because my mom suffers from dementia. And I'll tell you, they need a personal care facility with adequate care. They do not need to be in a jail cell or in a criminal justice system, in my opinion.
So, Sheriff, let me ask you this, just to kind of piggyback off of what Nanette was speaking on in regards to her brother. If someone calls law enforcement and inform them that, hey, I have a family member who is suffering from a mental illness, they are acting irate, they're trying to do harm to themselves or to someone in the family, I have power of attorney over them. If they call you and say, hey, listen, I have power of attorney, my loved one is not acting right now, can you send a deputy or can you send whomever over to come and help us and transport him to a treatment center? Is that something that law enforcement can actually do?
See, that's one of the positives here in Harris County. And I commend everybody that worked hard to make this happen, because we do have, I think, a process that would help address that. We would most likely send one of our crisis intervention response teams. And what we're trying to do as well is really also incorporate, which historically hasn't been done, our dispatchers as part of this process. Because too often the mindset in law enforcement is you send the first unit available, right? Somebody's calling for help, we're there to help. But what did I say earlier is we have limited tools. You know, we have a gun, we have handcuffs, we have a tow car, and we have jail and a taser. So what we're trying to do is make sure we deploy the right resource. In this case, we would probably send a crisis intervention response team. What would happen then, because we have a 24/7 jail diversion desk, which is pre-jail diversion, which means they don't even go into the jail. What we're trying to do is catch them at the front door. We didn't have that capacity before. Now we do. That individual would likely be taken to the Ed Emmett Diversion Center, where it would be more of like a clinic. They stabilize him. He's not incarcerated. And then we try to connect them. Our goal is to then connect them to what I mentioned earlier, that chronic consumer stabilization initiative, where now there's a holistic team of wraparound services to find him a medical home, make sure he's staying on medication. So it would be a completely different process that we would be able, but it also takes the arresting agency, because it's not always Harris County. We have a lot of different agencies. HPD is really good about it, but you need to make sure that your local municipality in Harris County is also participating in these, because they don't always have to divert. They could still choose to charge them with something. Right. And they end up then being incarcerated through the regular path of criminalization.
And you have to go through the system and all of that all over. We have another question for you, Sheriff. Dr. Melinda?
Hi, Sheriff Gonzalez. I'm Dr. Melinda Morris. I'm a physician. I'm a physician of 35 years in OB-GYN, so I'm going to speak, ask you a question regarding medical issues. If you have someone that's brought in and primarily for, you know, psychiatric issues and problems, do you have a relationship established with any sort of psychiatric medical department that could be on call, come in and triage these people that have been arrested to determine if really they need to go to the diversion center, if they need inpatient psychiatric hospital care, or if this is something that could be managed on an outpatient basis versus just incarceration. Has any relationship been developed with the medical departments to evaluate these issues?
Thank you for your question, Doctor. I appreciate it, and thank you for your service. Again, that diversion desk that we do, they have an actual desk at the booking area. So they're constantly monitoring who's coming in. They have access to medical records, and to protect, you know, HIPAA laws and other things like that. They have access to the database to kind of see if this individual or individuals have ever been involved somehow through for mental health care, have come through our system before, and past history there. There's an assessment that's required, that's mandated, that's done at the booking part of it at the point of booking. So we could try to vet some of that. Not everybody makes it through the diversion, sometimes for different reasons. It could be a more serious charge and other things that unfortunately, you know, still have to call for some incarceration. And then our partner here is Harris Center. They're on staff inside the jail. We have an entire mental health unit inside the jail facility with a large number of personnel that we dedicate to it, that we're investing here that could do more deep level analysis. They have psychiatrists that work here 24/7 to do those assessments. Sometimes, obviously, it's kind of hard to adequately, because of the volume that we have, it's adequate, you know, not a full scale assessment up front, but we do have different levels so that if somebody needs a referral because they're suicidal ideation or other things, that we could send them to that mental health unit. So we do some level of that, but, and we've worked with NAMI and others, we still need to have more of a coordinated response with everybody. That's why we have that jail diversion and mental health bureau, so that we could continue to build those connections and there could be a better continuum of care, so that there could be, even the discharge plan should be happening upon entry if they are getting booked, so that we can make sure that they have adequate care once they do come out. So I hope I answered your question in that.
I actually have a follow-up question from one of our Facebook attendees, and it kind of wraps into what you were saying. So I think it's awesome that you guys have this process, and also want to comment that NAMI has a great relationship with the Harris Center as well, and we definitely appreciate you working so closely with them. But Marietta Gerber would like to know, are your jailers trained in crisis intervention?
Yes, they are. They receive extensive training as part of coming in. They all go through a psychological assessment prior to being hired as well. And we also, they are very skilled at de-escalation. That's actually, you know, one of the skill sets that they develop quite a bit. You know, I tell everyone, at least my perspective coming through here is that these are clients. That's how I refer to them. Everyone, because they're just navigating the criminal justice system, and the vast majority of them have yet to be convicted. And I think that we should treat everybody with dignity and respect, whether they happen to have some type of mental illness indicator or whether they don't. Wow. And that we, in our profession, have to remind ourselves that we're still peace officers at the end of the day, that we have a duty and a responsibility to make sure that we care and protect those that come through our doors and make the Harris County Jail their temporary home. And that we could still be firm when it comes to public safety, because that's my North Star every day, is making sure that our residents are protected and that there's safety involved. But at the same time, we don't have to check our humanity at the door. We don't have to lose our compassion in our profession.
Did you have any other questions, Jessica?
Let me double check on Facebook. I don't see any others yet. It does have a bit of a delay.
So Sheriff, let's talk about this real quick while we still have you. I know you're very busy and we don't want to keep you. So what can the community do to help law enforcement officers deal with those in the community who do suffer with the mental illness? What can we do to make things go, you know, hopefully it not become a lethal type of encounter?
Yeah, I think we have to, I think we have a unique opportunity here for us to be transformational, to really transform our entire criminal justice system in a very positive way. And I think it requires constructive dialogue. I think that hopefully in our brief time here, I've highlighted some of the programs that we've looked at, and we're working on many more, because I think there absolutely is a way to divert some of the calls for service that we typically respond to. At the same time, we got to make sure that we do so in a responsible way, that as we move some possible resources towards that, that we also don't deplete law enforcement, because I feel that it still has a very important role. as we saw in the situation here, the tragic situation of the death of Sergeant Preston, sometimes situations that we might at first said, well, this is just requires some mediation. Let's just send a social worker there. And again, we work with social workers and we have proven models that work.
Right.
Sometimes things can become very volatile. And so we got to make sure that we do that in a smart way. And I think that we need to make sure that first we're adequately funding the NAMIs of the world and others to adequately do more work in the community so that there's a warm handoff there. It's not one or the other. It's not just to say, let's stop this and let's just hope that the rest can pick up the slack, you know? So I think we could have meaningful conversations. We also need to make sure that we work tirelessly to make sure that we have more funding at the state. These are political decisions that are involved. Absolutely. You know, look, you know, this isn't about any particular election, but people need to be voting right now and make sure that they're paying attention to all candidates at all levels to see. Typically, we don't run on these type of things. I know I've been on city council, and typically it's that people care about infrastructure, flooding, and all those things are critically important. But we spend a lot of money, sometimes very ineffectively, in systems that aren't effective to dealing these issues, you know? And we got to end the stigma of mental illness.
Right.
We got to talk openly about it. We've launched our own wellness unit here in the sheriff's office last year, so that we have on-staff psychologists to make sure that we're dealing with the stressors of the job and trauma that goes with our first-line responders, to make sure that they're not giving from an empty cup, that they get the help that they need to be better performers when it comes to the job, because we need them. In our job, we can't afford any bad apples. I know we say that sometimes, well, there's always gonna be a few bad apples. I'm sorry, but in our profession, we can't afford one. It's a matter of life and death. We gotta do better. And so I think there's not a simple ask. I would just say, to learn more at through NAMI and the work that they're doing, go to our website, harriscountycit.org, to see some of the programs. So we can have good discussion and say, look, it's not one or the other. Let's see what is working in society, what's not. Let's end mass incarceration. Jail should be a place that truly is for the serious individuals that are accused of very serious crimes. But let's understand that there's a lot that don't need to be in jail, frankly. Exactly. And let's advocate for that. And let's advocate for an intentional based system of corrections. For too long, it's been based on money and who can afford to bail out and who has to stay in there because they're too poor. And it should be based on risk and an intentional based system that we as Texans, as people in our communities, really can intelligently say, look, these individuals, we're seriously concerned that they're chronic offenders, that they're reoffending, that they're out of multiple bonds. They need to be in jail. But there's a lot that we could all agree on. Like I try to advocate for the compassionate release at the beginning of COVID for individuals that are suffering from mental illness, that have, you know, that we're seeing comorbidity, that are older adults with serious underlying issues that find themselves incarcerated that haven't been convicted yet. Let's all rally behind areas that we can agree on, and then maybe we could debate the other issues. But there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, and we need to all advocate for one another for the adequate funding of different entities that need to support this work, because we should not be in the front lines. We can play a role, and agencies that are innovative and are forward thinking and compassionate in their approaches shouldn't be punished, you know, unilaterally. You know, we need to make sure that we continue to support that. At the same time, especially with communities of color, law enforcement needs to own the poor history that had in its early origins with policing in this country and the Black community. The slave patrols, the discrimination, Jim Crow, and mass incarceration, frankly, is another entity and element of that. And we need to make sure that we're advocating for smart policy when it comes to this. And I've seen good ideas come from different parties. Right. You know, when it comes to political spectrum, I've seen good ideas coming from the Democratic Party. I commend President Obama when he visited, a prison as the first sitting president to do that, to talk about some of the issues around, mass incarceration, just like I commend President Trump for talking about the opioid issue early on and seeing it that it should be a public health issue, and also talking about reform at the federal system. It hasn't gone far enough because far too often we don't talk about our county jail systems enough, and that needs to be part of the discussion. Because when it comes to situations, we address what we see out in the TV, which is the very clear, traumatic, difficult encounters that we see.
Right.
So we have to keep peeling that onion and look at the trauma, the mental illness, and the things that aren't always seen to the naked eye. And those are county jail systems and how we better deal with it during an era of COVID, mental illness, and all these other intersects of public policy that happen within a county jail system. Your county sheriffs, your prosecutors are powerful positions in these public policy debates.
Absolutely. I brought that question up to you, Sheriff, because I know that it's for us, for the community, it's so easy to blame those in position when there's something wrong that goes on. For instance, whenever there's a police-involved shooting, we're quick to blame the chief of police, we're quick to blame the sheriff's deputy, we're quick to blame those, not really understanding that there's no way, first of all, that our chief of police here in Houston can oversee over 5,500 officers. There's no way you can oversee over 3,500 officers or deputies. So I want the community to understand that we have to somehow get involved like you've been talking about. And that was the reason for bringing up that question, is because I want people to fully understand and know what they can do to help make sure that another family does not lose their loved one who's suffering with the mental illness, especially in that type of tragic way. What can we do? So now you're saying for us we actually have to get on the phone, we have to get on our computer, send emails to our congresspeople, our leaders, our representatives, request the funding that you all need to make sure you can put the resources in the community. That's the reason for asking you that, because I wanted you to, speak to the community and let them know that, hey, you need to call whoever the representatives are for this wide area that we live in and ask them and make sure that we're holding them accountable. We know that you guys can't respond to everything, especially when it's so much territory to cover. There's 6 million people here. So there's no way that 3,500 or 5,500 officers can attend to everything. So I'm glad that you spoke on that and brought that up. So if you want to leave your contact information, Sheriff, for people to be able to reach out to you on social media and to your office, please, by all means, go ahead and leave that so they can connect with you that way.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for this dialogue. And look, when it comes to funding and advocating, I'm even saying, look, send it to the community-based organizations, the NAMI and other. We were just talking, your reach is powerful and you do impactful work, but you're limited in the fact that you could only cover certain counties. I don't even know. Galveston County obviously needs that. We heard from somebody that's desperately trying to help her brother, and we want to make sure that she finds a good outcome because it's so hard on families dealing with this. And so we all have to make sure that we're working together on this, because that's the only way we can move forward. But let's end the stigma. Let's make sure that we're advancing this. I'm very hopeful that we could find evidence-based practices that work, that make sense, so that we could just have better outcomes all around. And don't forget the children. Like I mentioned, 90,000 children are in our community right now in classrooms in the COVID era, expected to excel when mom or dad are locked up in prison. We had one child that had both parents locked up in our county jail system. That's trauma that nobody's healing. Nobody's healing. I dealt with somebody that was a military veteran, a female, 53 years old, and she was telling me her testimony and said that when she was 12 years old, she was raped by her uncle and then pimped out here in the third ward of our community. And she started speaking, she started crying, and I paused her because I said, that's unresolved hurt. Those tears are real, and that's still that 12-year-old child that nobody ever helped, nobody ever healed. And we see it play out through the criminal justice system, now still being 53 years old. And unless we're dealing with those issues, we're gonna keep seeing the same outcomes. But anyway, you could find me, I'm very active on all social media platforms. I interact myself because I want to make sure that I'm listening to what's happening in the community. But my Twitter handle and Instagram, you can find me at Sheriff Ed _HCSO. That's Sheriff Ed _HCSO. It's SHERIFF Ed _HCSO. And my Facebook is under Ed Gonzalez Houston. Those are my personal pages. And then we have our agency one at HCSO Texas. And then I remember it off the top of my head, but the one for our mental health unit, it's a wonderful communications that they do. It's HCSO, I believe Texas _MHU, I believe, mental health unit. But if you do the search, you'll be able to find them as well.
Okay.
But yeah, please join the conversation, stay in touch, continue to tune in to your program. You give valuable, impactful, thanks to your transformational leader, continue to do what you're doing, and please count on us if we could help be of service or try to answer questions. We may not have all the answers, but we'll try.
Thank you. And I just want to let everyone know that Sheriff Ed does respond to your messages personally. He does not have others take any type of calls or messages for him. He's going to respond personally. So I can contest to that he's actually the one that responds to all of the messages.
Thank you.
And before everybody goes, I do want to talk a little bit about NAMI. So much of what I've heard you say, I feel like NAMI and its advocates, its partners can assist with.
Yes.
So I was able to give the information for NAMI Gulf Coast, which handles the Galveston County area, to Nanette. Thank you so much, Mario, for passing that information along to me. But NAMI Greater Houston, first of all, we have what we call our warm line. It is not quite a hotline, right? So it's not a crisis line, but maybe somewhere in between, kind of like Nanette and some of these situations that Sheriff Gonzalez spoke about, where people just really aren't sure what the next steps are. So it's an awesome resource center with real live people, warm-bodied people with voices that will listen and give you every resource we have in the book that would help. So that's other community organizations that will assist you with mental health issues, that may be able to assist with housing, legal issues, anything that's mental health related. Sheriff Gonzalez listed mental illness and addiction as two of his three issues, but addiction is actually a mental illness. Mm-hmm. So we do have resources to assist with that as well. So please visit our website at www.namigreaterhouston.org. That's NAMI is NAMI, greaterhouston.org. It will have the warm line number on the homepage, but also we offer free support groups and educational classes all around the city. And right now they are virtual due to COVID. So we can reach you anywhere is what I guess I'm saying. So please look into our programs and services, see what we have to offer. If you have any questions, please call the office. You can reach me directly. I'm at jmcdaniel@namigreaterhouston.org if you have any questions. But the biggest thing, and I love Sheriff Gonzalez that you repeatedly said, in the stigma. It's a big deal. So we have to talk about it. We have to acknowledge the trauma. We have to acknowledge the mental illness. We have to acknowledge what we're going through in order to heal and move forward. So in the stigma means talk about it. Talk about it with your friends. Talk about it with your family. Let people know how you are feeling, and ask others how they are feeling if you feel that they are moving towards a crisis situation. They're uncomfortable conversations, but they have to be had. It's the first step in healing and the first step in moving towards resolution, which is kind of, I think, what the overall tone of what we've been discussing, right? We're kind of aware of the problems, but what is the resolution? So I definitely, again, applaud you and your office and all of the initiatives that you are taking to work towards a resolution, working with the community advocates, organizations like NAMI, the Harris Center, and so many others we're all in this together.
Yes. And
that's one of NAMI's main points, is you are not alone. No matter which side of this conversation you're on, you're not alone. So thank you very much. It's heartbreaking to hear some of the stories that you tell. And as a part of NAMI, I've had my share of heartbreaking stories as well. And you mentioned how many children have parents that are incarcerated, but 1 in 6 children between the ages of 10 and 17 are living with a mental illness themselves. That's not just them parents, that's themselves. So that's its own its own pandemic in itself. And then with adults, 1 in 5 live with a mental illness. So NAMI is here to help. There are many other organizations that are here to help. And obviously, Sheriff Gonzalez, so are you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Sheriff,
did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah, just want to thank the Sheriff for taking time out of his busy day. We know you got a big city to take care of. So
my pleasure. This is an honor. And like I said, I'm very passionate about it and look forward to tuning in and joining you again. So please have me on.
We want it to be ongoing, Sheriff. So we'll definitely reach out to you so we can have this ongoing discussion to be part of the solution. Be part of the solution. That's the whole goal, is to be part of the solution. So
absolutely.
Thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate you guys so much.
Thank you.
Also, before I get everyone, please visit www.voteformentalhealth.org. That's the number 4. It'll give you information about the elections and how each candidate in your area feels about the different mental health legislation that's being proposed. Kind of like Sheriff Gonzalez said, all of the things that he wishes were in place. There are people who are in power and have the authority to put those things in place, to put those programs and services in place. So please visit vote4mentalhealth.org to see what your local candidates feel about mental health initiatives.
That's awesome.
We will set you free, Sheriff Gonzalez. I know you're such a busy person. Thank you so very much.
Appreciate it. Continue the great work.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions for Dreux or I before we shut down today? I appreciate the questions from Facebook. I apologize if some of the Facebook audience missed portions of the conversation as my computer was giving me some technical issues. If you would like the full Zoom recording, please email me and I can send it to you. I'm not, like I said, I'm not really sure what it looks like on Facebook. It's probably pretty choppy and I do apologize, but we do have the recording available if anybody has any questions about the areas that were missed. No? All right, well, again, Dreux, thank you so very much for putting all of this together and for joining us. I love your insight. I love your questions. And I'm so very much looking forward to working with you closer on more initiatives going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jessica.
You are welcome. And our fearless leader, Dr. Neil Sarahan, was supposed to join us today. So keep him in your thoughts as he's not feeling well. But I'm sure he'll join us very soon.
Awesome.
So thank you guys again for joining us for our Tuesday Talks. We're here every Tuesday at 1 p.m. on Zoom and on Facebook Live. I cannot remember off the top of my head who's going to be here. Oh, next week is Voting Tuesday. So we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the legislation from Vote for Mental Health. So it'll probably be myself and a couple of our board members just kind of chatting it up, but please still join us. That conversation and community engagement is critical. I want to hear what you think about the election. I want to hear what you think about the legislation that's being passed or not passed, and how all of this affects you guys personally. So please join us next Tuesday. Same link for Zoom, same page on Facebook Live. And again, thank you guys for joining us.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.